Tyler, we forgot to do the intro.
I know. I didn't think that this was the one to do it for.
All right. Well, welcome back to the Modern Craftsman podcast. This week we got something a little bit, well, no,
A lot of bit
different. Yeah, it's we're talking about some intense craftsmanship, stuff that there is no wrong. Like there's no close enough. There's no
Yeah.
that'll work. That's okay. That's we can work with that. It's 5 painstaking years of doing the same thing over and over until it's perfect.
And our guest is French royalty, I believe. Briou Bourgeois.
Yeah.
Briou Bourgeois.
Come to find out his name's actually John.
Yeah.
Does
But
not
his
go by
dad's
John.
name is John also, so he went with by Briou.
Briou, yeah.
But I had to email him and be like, listen, Nick and I feel really stupid right now, but we do not know how to pronounce your name. And I guess I saw John come through in an email, and then I saw the Briou, and maybe I didn't put 2 and 2 together with the bourgeois, and I was like, maybe it's like Celtic. Have you ever seen Celtic names spelled?
No.
They're spelled like way different than they sound. And I was like, maybe it's Celtic. And then I was way off. He's just like a Cajun, southern Mississippi, coastal Mississippi. Fun facts.
Learn about geography tonight, guys.
Yeah, he got a hold of us a while back, or he got a hold of me, and he's a mechanical engineer, and he works for NASA, and he wanted to kind of talk about what he does as far as managing contractors and builds and testing rockets. And he sent me some clips on Instagram, which we're going to try and grab off of there and be able to post directly from our Instagram. But we can't dig into the specifics of that. We talk about, how he got into that, what he does, kind of keeping morale up on these long 5-year builds and tests and setups prior to actually being able to dry fire these rockets. And also he has a YouTube channel. He has a small little fabrication business on the side, which is what he did prior to this, but just a really nice down-to-earth guy, building a house soon of his own. So we kind of talked to him about what that looked like, interviewing contractors, some red flags that he ran into, why he went with the contractor that he did. Low-key conversation, but really cool, just a different angle and not that much different than what we do when you think of, a structural engineer on our jobs. That's what he does just with rocket scientists.
Yeah. And fun fact, some of the parts on these rockets, you can buy at your local hardware store.
Most of them.
Most of them.
No. That'd be cool, though.
Briou. Nice to meet you.
Briou?
Yep.
We were trying to figure that out.
It's a tough one.
I mean, I thought maybe it was like Celtic initially.
Just super Cajun.
Yeah.
Cajun French.
Fair. I feel like Briou and your last name's Bourgeois.
Bourgeois, yep.
Bourgeois. Dude, I feel like if we just announce your name on the podcast, people are going to think that we have like some sort of French royalty on.
Yeah. Unless you got anybody down in South Mississippi.
Is that where you're out of?
South Louisiana, rather.
Is that where you are?
So I'm in South Mississippi.
I don't think we've had anyone from South Mississippi on.
Not that I know of from what I've listened to. I know y'all have Telich. He's in
Yeah.
Baton Rouge, and Slash is over that way too, huh?
Yeah. Dude, you first and thank you so much for all the support you've given us.
Yeah.
You've reached out so many times, and just always you seem like you're always been a huge advocate for what we're doing, so it's appreciated.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, I've gained just so much from listening to the podcast personally, especially as we're going into our own personal house build and stuff like that. So
that's cool.
I've gotten so much out of it. It's the least I can do to share and whatnot.
I never thought of it from that side of it, Tyler, of like someone listening that might be on the receiving end of construction. Like everyone we talk
like
to is
hiring people.
Yeah, like everyone that we're talking to is the hired person, not the
I feel like
hiree.
we've been on the receiving end of construction for about 2 years now.
Very true. You know what I meant, though.
I did. So I assume that you're from that area, Briou.
Yeah, so I was born in New Orleans, and then when I was about 2, we moved over to the Mississippi Gulf Coast and been here ever since.
What family moved there for work?
I think they just wanted to get out of the city. Over here on the Gulf Coast, it's a lot slower pace, smaller towns, just little beach towns, basically.
How far is that from Louisiana?
So from the Louisiana state line, we're like right there at it. But from New Orleans, where we lived originally, about an hour.
Oh, that's not
No.
far.
No,
See, my
not at all.
geographical knowledge, once you get like out of the tri-state area, I'm like, I have no idea. Sounds like it's south.
Yeah, I don't even know what the tri-state area is to you, so
Well, that's
right
perfect.
there with you.
I'm pulling it up online because now I feel like I don't know where. Oh yeah, okay.
I feel like I always wanted to visit that area though. Like I also don't know why, but maybe it's because you're going to be on the podcast. But recently my Instagram feed has been all of these like super Cajun dudes frying stuff on griddles and like cooking stuff over like a propane open torch type thing recently. And I'm like, I don't know why this is coming up on my feed right now.
That's funny.
Dude, Mississippi's huge.
Is it?
Everything's huge aside from the Northeast.
Yeah, I guess
that's
so.
True. But it's, you know what, I never, and this,
I mean, it's long when you spell it.
That's true.
I never associate Mississippi with the ocean.
I gotta look it
Well,
up now.
And maybe that's like,
You probably shouldn't associate it with the ocean per se. So
I mean, you're on the
Gulf.
ocean. It's like,
We're on the Gulf, and so if you look at the map, the Mississippi River dumps out just to the west of us, and so pretty much all the water around us is brown. It's not good looking water at all. You got to go over towards like Destin, Panama City Beach, over that way in Florida to get to the nice water.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I mean, we're right on the coast.
Yeah, it's
Pretty much all we do is fish during the summer.
You're right next to Arkansas, Tennessee, Alabama, Louisiana. I've really wanted to visit that entire area. I feel like maybe I watched him, like we were just talking about him, Anthony Bourdain shows,
Oh yeah.
where he was down that way, and it just looked like super down to earth, which is probably, I don't know, maybe it's indicative of what it's like, but I guess you can make any area look amazing and like you'd want to live there, and then you go live there and you're like, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I've stayed here for 30 years now, so it's got something to it. It's definitely a much slower pace of life than a lot of the big cities I'm sure y'all are used to. So
Yeah. I actually have customers that are from Arkansas. Her husband was in some sort of IT. I feel like he was doing like IT for University of Arkansas, and then they moved up this way. And I was like, yeah, there's no way these people are gonna like pay my fee, and then like hired me sight unseen and paid like all the bills, no issue. And I'm like, damn, there must be like little pockets of money down in Arkansas that I was unaware. I'm probably just making these massive generalizations, but it's just like a bunch of poor, Cajun
Well, no, I mean,
people, crocodiles, alligators.
no, there's definitely something to that. There are pockets here and there of wealthier areas, and that's all throughout the South. I can really only speak for Mississippi, but we do a lot of duck hunting in the Delta area. It's all agricultural, and there's not nearly as much money up in those areas compared to like the big city centers, Jackson, Mississippi, and Meridian, all those areas, as well as the coast in generals.
You have a hunting dog?
I do not. I rely on other people for that.
Yeah. Duck hunting looks cool.
It's a lot of fun.
I could see. I always think that hunting, like in general, I like being out in the woods. I like being out in nature. I think that the idea of hunting is very appealing to me. Like I could see why people hunt, but then although I do eat meat, not as much these days, but like I have trouble killing things.
Right.
But like I could kill a goose.
Yeah.
Like people hunt goose, and I could definitely
Do
like
people
kill a
eat
few
goose?
geese and not feel badly about it. I don't know if they eat them or not. Like-
they're less than ideal.
Yeah, like cat. Like I don't know. I know people hunt Canadian goose and stuff, like geese and stuff like that. But I could definitely like I've hit them with the boat and didn't feel badly about it.
Yeah.
But I think I could shoot some geese. I could shoot probably like some groundhogs, not feel badly. But I don't know if I could just like take out a deer or a bear or something. I feel so badly.
Yeah. I get that.
Then you gotta drag it out. Like you gotta carry the thing out of the way.
Yeah, groundhog's light.
I was thinking the bear.
So you obviously, all right. What exactly do you do? Are you work with rocket scientists? Are you an engineer?
Yeah, so I'm a mechanical engineer. The group I'm in, so I work for NASA at Stennis Space Center here on the Gulf Coast. And the primary work that we do here is testing rocket stages, rocket engines, rocket engine components, all that sort of stuff. So I'm in the mechanical operations group, and my group is the one who we sort of manage and run the test stands, all the test equipment, valves, tanks, piping, tubing, all that sort of stuff. We manage the build up for incoming projects, the test series that we do, as well as the demolition between projects.
So is this your real name on the podcast? Is this
So
like
my
an
first name is John.
alias?
Yeah, no, my first name is John. That was also my dad's. That is also my dad's name. So just go by my middle name, which is Briou.
I was wondering because John came up on the email, and I was like,
Yeah.
it's a lot easier for me right now. So you obviously went to college. Where did you go to college?
Yeah, so I just went to Mississippi State University. It's about 4 hours from the coast, so it was far enough away to not be at home, but
Yeah.
close enough for me anyway. To if I needed to get home, I could.
For mechanical engineering?
Yeah, so I did my undergrad and master's degrees from Mississippi State in mechanical engineering.
Damn. You knew that that's what you wanted to do?
Not really. I knew I wanted to be involved something mechanically, and just sort of growing up, and it's a lot of what y'all talk about on the podcast. Like growing up, college was the only option for me
Yeah.
after high school. That's just what you did, and like all through high school, I was lifting Jeeps, working on engines, just a lot of automotive stuff, souping up cars and whatnot. And so the only logical thing I could do in college in my head was mechanical engineering. I think originally I had the idea I'd get my engineering degree and then go design cars or go work for a Formula One team or something like that. Like that was my
Yeah.
lofty goal at the time. But
So it wasn't like NASA was close. I'm going to go to school and then work for NASA.
to be honest, and looking back, it doesn't make sense at all. To be honest, NASA working out here was sort of like a fallback plan. Like, oh, worst case, I can get a job out there.
Yeah.
Turns out it's hard to get a job out here for the most part.
At NASA.
Yeah.
The general, like my general thought on NASA is that, and this is what I wanted to ask is it still operating as it was 10 years ago, 15 years ago? Is it growing, or like, because I'm envisioning that NASA's made major cuts and they're not doing as much testing. They're not, working on as many projects. And this is me just completely making it up, knowing nothing about NASA.
Right. No,
But I
there's
just feel like
definitely-
you don't hear. I feel like I don't hear anyone talk about it anymore.
Yeah, there's definitely been a shift from the shuttle era to now. A lot more is gone to private industry, private contractors, especially
Like
for
like SpaceX is that?
yeah, like SpaceX, Boeing. Let's see who else. I mean, hop on the Google machine. You can just Google private
Yeah.
industry in space world. But
Why is that?
I think so. And I'm getting a little out of my bounds here,
That's
but
okay.
I know
We
as
pretty
it,
much make most shit up on the podcast, so don't worry about it. We don't fact check anything.
right on, then this will work. So obviously NASA is a government agency. It's funded through the government. So as administrations change, goals for different administrations change, and that sort of guides what we do and how much involvement we have. So there's a big gap from the end of the shuttle era until now. We're getting the Space Launch System up and going. That's the latest, basically government funded rocket. And so I was heavily involved in that testing here at Stennis. But there is definitely a shift towards more commercialized private industry in the space industry.
And you say the project that you're working on now is a rocket. What is that? Like, what's the intent behind that rocket?
So the Space Launch System, it's the new moon rocket, for lack of a better term. So we had Saturn back in the 60s and 70s. That was the initial moon rocket, and we really haven't been back all that much since. So the SLS Space Launch System is the new moon rocket, the new government-funded moon rocket to get us back to the moon. Set up, I think and this may have changed since the last time we've all gone over it here, but plan would be to set up sort of like a space station in orbit around the moon as a jumping off point for deeper space travel.
Guys, this podcast is brought to you by Duration Molding and Millwork. So Tyler, I actually just got our proposal back from Duration and for all of our true exterior. And I mean, first and foremost, I had sent that over. I spent an enormous amount of time with I shouldn't say I did. My team spent an enormous amount of time breaking down the drawings and making sure that we had everything quantified correctly, and kicked that over to them and literally turned that proposal around in record time.
Really?
And the team was like, "Hey, we got that proposal back." I'm like, "What?" And they're like, "Yeah." And I opened it up, and it's got like first round shop drawings attached. Like everything is like, hey, broken down by piece. I'm like, damn. I'm like, there.
I mean, you'd have to if you have the turnarounds that they do, you have to hit the ground running.
Right. So now it's a matter of like we're going through it, making sure everything's accurate, getting the architect on board. Teak has designed some really cool bracketry, and making sure that we're on top of that. But it's they even reached out and they said, hey, there's these window panels and like raised panels underneath the windows. Do you want us to prefabricate those? I'm like, yeah. Not like I'm thinking that we would be building this stuff on.
Yeah. Why wouldn't
site.
you?
It's like,
say no more.
Right. And he's like, all right, I'll include those. And it's like, what about the outside corners? You want all those glued up and mitered? And I'm like,
duh.
Yeah. So it's, this is the number one, what I love about working with a great company, but in general, like how do we streamline what we do in the field, and how do we, take advantage of opportunities where something can be shop built and be built at a better.
Yeah, it's going to be way better if you think you're able to do that in a controlled environment, especially working with those long lengths on like tables that are long and fully supported. That's a no-brainer all day long. You're going to get a better product.
Yeah, and I think I said last time, it's, we have a bunch of shiplap, and same thing. It's like, hey, I'm going to send you long lengths, but I'll tongue and groove the end, so all you have to do is put them together, and we can reduce waste significantly.
Yeah, it's the way to go.
If you guys want to learn more about Duration, head over to their website, durationmillwork.com. This podcast is brought to you by Rockwool, high performance, fire resistant, soundproofing, stone wool insulation for interior and exterior walls. At this point, I feel like we're using it on every project. You guys have seen our Rhode Island project, inside and outside. It's so funny. We have so many questions about, hey, why wouldn't you put insulation on the inside of the wall? And we're like, we're doing that too.
Yeah.
Like, then why is it on the outside of the wall? I'm like, well, technically, it's better on the outside of the wall. And if you think of it like wearing a jacket. You want a jacket on the outside, not wind trying to like blowing through and then trying to keep you warm. I think more people don't realize the
outside.
The benefit of exterior insulation, and just even from a technical side.
I mean, I think that they think that the insulation, which it makes sense, and it is contributing to that, but that it's controlling interior temperature more so than like exterior temperature,
Right. Yeah. Maintaining the climate in the inside.
Correct.
And, so as I'm thinking about this, I'm like, these are the people that need to be part of this art class program. This is an opportunity for you to be part of a community that Rockwell's put together, and they have all the resources to walk you through these details. And the best part is when you are approached with a project that maybe just has a standard installation detail, you can work with them, and they can work through the details on how to improve that system. And they're also working with, the WRB manufacturers and the sheathing manufacturers to understand how they are impacted with their assemblies. So if you guys want to join or learn more about the art class program, head over to rockwell.com/rclass. This podcast is also brought to you by Upstate Merch. So a quality focused screen printing, embroidery, and graphic design shop in Whitney Point, New York. Dylan and his team have been working with us for materia as well as some NS Builders swag. And if you guys don't already know, they handle all of the Modern Craftsman swag. And if you're interested in getting some of that, make sure you head over to our Instagram, click the link in our bio, and you can order some stuff. If you want it for free, you got to leave us a 5-star review and let us know how we're doing, and we'll pick them randomly. And while you're on Instagram, head over to Upstate Merch's page. Check out all the cool stuff they do. You know what I love that they do on a consistent basis is the in the shop, behind the scenes videos.
Yeah, I enjoy that too, because I actually find the screen printing business pretty interesting.
It's so interesting.
Yeah. And I don't know. I like to see the behind the scenes in the shop and the people working there. It's cool to be able to see that, and to be ordering from a shop that is like a small shop, providing for employees and families, and not ordering something from somewhere you don't know where it's coming from, overseas, whatever it may be. It's a local New York company, upstate New York, and it's cool to be able to see what they're doing and where your money's going.
Yeah. So if you guys want 10% off your first order, make sure you mention the Modern Craftsman podcast when you email them, print@upstatemerch.com.
All right, so on like a practical level, what is the purpose of space travel at this point?
I mean, primarily just exploration, obviously learning more about everything outside of Earth to gain better knowledge about what's going on here, and obviously all the satellites and everything. That sort of.
I mean, that makes sense to me. But I just didn't know if there was like another plan. I mean, it's always been like what's outside of Earth, and obviously Mars and stuff like that we've been to, but I don't know if there was any massive strides. It does, like Nick said, kind of seem as though there's not much noise out of that other than those private companies now. But that also does make sense with like being that it's a government program and different people in office and different programs, that it would kind of be shifting depending on who's in office and where that money's getting allocated and who, what's on each person's agenda.
Right.
It just seems so weird, like, and again, I don't know anything about space travel and truly what we're learning outside of Earth and how that affects what we do here. But, if I had to be narrow-minded, it's like, why aren't we using those resources for something on Earth?
Right, and I think that's a part of the reason why a lot of it's going more towards private industry, is just as the government, we're using taxpayer dollars to do what we do, and so that's obviously, this is all way above my pay grade.
Yeah,
but
it's just an interesting conversation.
Right, for sure.
It's like you say that you said we haven't been back to the moon since the 70s.
Yeah, and not that I know we haven't put boots back on the moon since the end of all the Apollo missions.
Right. Maybe I should know that. I had no.
I was unaware of this. I figured it was like
I figured we were up there,
always
like,
there.
Yeah, checking in on things every once in a while.
Yeah, I think we
no.
transitioned. No, we transitioned from the Apollo era into the shuttle era, and primarily doing space station work.
So most of the travel that when nowadays or in the last, say, decade has been up into space to the space station.
Yeah, so all the human flight for the most part has been going up to the International Space Station, and then a bunch of other.
And what is that thing doing?
They do a bunch of science up there. Basically, it's a science lab floating around up there. So they're working on growing crops in zero gravity, and they have experiments on what flames do in zero gravity, and just all sorts of stuff that I don't even know what's going on, but primarily science experiments of sorts.
So the private industry right now is basically looking for a way to make money.
Yep.
Who, like, I'm going to sound so dumb right now, but like nobody owns that, right? Like, can you lay claim to that?
To what?
Like
Space.
the moon, like a part of the moon? Like if it's private industry, right? And you're like pulling resources from that, like essentially that's what they're looking to do. Like, how are they, you know what I mean?
Right.
300 years ago, it's like you sail a ship and you land and you're like, you know what, we're going to take this shit over. But I would say that there probably doesn't work that way now. You can't just like land on the moon and be like, you know what, this is ours now.
Yeah, I'm not even going to attempt to touch that one. I have no idea how all that's going to work.
But like if private industry, yeah, that's interesting. I guess this is a lot of things that I just have not thought. So I'll be completely honest. When the only time that like space and space exploration really interested me was when I was like my kid's age, where it was like this crazy idea and they pump this stuff, you could go to the moon and like the planets, and you learn about the solar system. And then after that, from like an academic perspective or even a practical angle, there's been nothing in my life that's had anything to do with anything outside of Earth, let alone like New Jersey.
No, yeah, that was the same with me until I got out of grad school and didn't have a job. I was like, hey, let's see what happens down at Stennis Space Center, see what goes on there, and then 5 years later, I'm deep off into it.
Does your wife work?
She does. She's a dietitian at one of our local hospitals.
Okay. How is it working for a government agency? Wonderful?
It's got its ups and downs.
Yeah.
The bureaucracy of it all, and that's probably the most challenging part, is going through the right channels to do everything. Like,
Yeah.
even something as simple like, hey, we need to order this valve, and if it's there's just procurement is probably one of the more challenging things that I have to deal with. My group has to deal with
now, or has always been a challenge.
I think it has always been a challenge. Just
I'm sure it's so much paperwork.
yeah, luckily we're not super hands-on in that paperwork, but we have timelines that we have to meet as the operations group, and then that whenever we have to go to procurement to order a valve or get a contractor on site to build up like heavy welding construction or something like that, it's luckily we have people who do that full time for us, but there's definitely a lot of hoops to jump through to get something seemingly simple accomplished.
Okay, so you get, sorry, Nick, go ahead.
That's okay. No, I'm just like, where do you get the, like, hey, I need this valve. Like, do you have a Granger catalog?
Man, they got to make this stuff.
It's like, hey, can you grab the Granger space catalog? And
if they don't have it, go to Lowe's. Any sort of hose spigot will do.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what it is, honestly, because we have potable water systems that are just, we can order a brass valve from any number of vendors, but then we also have valves that need to hold 10,000 psi liquid oxygen.
Imagine being at Home Depot and like you're checking
could
out,
help
and you're like,
me.
oh, you got a little house project going on. It's like, no, this is actually for
I'm putting this on a rocket ship.
yeah, a rocket ship. It's like, oh, what are you doing? A science experiment?
Probably get more people
like,
saying
no,
that at
actually,
Home Depot than
NASA.
you would think.
No, this
Putting
is,
this
I
on a
work for
rocket
NASA.
ship.
Yeah. Building a
All right.
rocket.
So you get done college. You don't know what you're going to do. NASA. You get a job with NASA.
Wait, how did you get there? Did we touch on that? I know you said it was a backup plan, but you also said it was really hard to. You thought it was going to be easy.
Well, so it turned out for me, basically all the stars lined up for a job that I wanted, that I would want to work. Was there was an opening for it. I had at the time I had a buddy who worked for our prime contractor, as well as a buddy who worked for NASA. He's still with NASA. He's in my group now, but he was in a different group at the time. Basically, hit me up and they're like, "Hey, this job's open. Why don't you apply for it? You'd be a good fit." Well, to back up a little bit, out of undergrad, didn't have any job prospects at the time. Luckily, I had an advisor approach me. We were both at the chiropractor at the same time, conveniently enough, and he's just sort of talking to me, and he's like, "Have you ever thought about grad school?" And I was like, "No, but I am now." And so he basically got me set up in the master's program. So went through that, primarily materials research, different metals and whatnot. And then whenever I graduated, my last semester of grad school, I actually purchased a fabrication business, patent rights to build these aluminum crawfish tables. And basically I'd talk myself up, and advice from other people in my life. They're like, "Hey, you buy this patent, get these tools, it's $1 million business." Turns out making crawfish tables in a hot barn, just bent over welding aluminum all day, is not really my gig. So, like freshly married, did I get that? Yeah. So freshly married, I'm building crawfish tables, just wearing myself out. And my buddy tells me this job opening came up, and so I just went ahead and applied for it and came out and interviewed. There's actually 2 positions. Funny the way it worked out. Our prime contractor, they sort of mirror what we do to an extent, as well as provide all the labor for us. So there's a mechanical engineering spot with our prime contractor as well as with NASA. I applied for both, got interviews for both, and my interviews were back to back. One was Monday, one was Tuesday. So I came out, interviewed for both of them, and got the offer from NASA the day before I got the offer from the contractor. So it all sort of worked out in the end. But just, I mean, honestly, the stars aligned and everything fell in place for me to get this position. But like going forward and looking back on it, I see now that it was all these holes lining up, all the stars lining up to land me where I'm at now.
What's a crawfish table?
So all those videos you see of people cooking on these open propane burners.
Yeah, then dumping them.
Yeah, so like the primary purpose of those burners was boiling crawfish in this neck of the woods. So get a sack of crawfish, you boil them up, and then you got to eat them. So to eat them, you got to take the heads off, peel them, whatever you got to do to get the meat out of the tail. So I was building their 4-foot round aluminum diamond plate decks, channel welded around the outside, 3 legs, a hole in the center. Basically put your trash can under it. Everybody stands around it. You peeling crawfish, throwing the shells in the trash can in the middle, drinking cold beer, having a great time.
How many did you make?
A few
Too
hundred.
many.
Yeah.
I actually, my mom's husband, so my stepdad's son, works for SpaceX, I believe in Florida at this point. He was in California. And I think he does some sort of aluminum welding for them
Nice.
down there, which apparently is like a very specialized trade. But I digress. So you get done school and, you pick up this job. What, like, because I think that it's a fairly complex industry. What did you get hired for? Like, what was your role? What did you think you'd be doing?
So basically, I was hired to, as I was getting hired, we were in the process of building up to test the core stage for the Space Launch System. And so as we were gearing up for that, they were hiring more engineers to run the systems needed to do that hot fire testing.
And you had zero experience?
Zero.
This is also what's crazy to me. It's like, yo, we need engineers. We're going to be launching rockets. You have no experience. Let's hire him.
Yeah.
But he did make crawfish tables.
Yeah.
So he should be good.
And I bet, and they've been to those parties, and they were nice tables.
Yeah.
But you just said something like you're talking about doing. I don't even know what you just said. A core test, which I'm maybe assuming that's like the main rocket engine. You know, not the. I don't even know phase 1, phase 2. Tell me you have a core rocket
I don't have
sitting
any
on your
pictures of
desk
it.
right now. Oh.
But if you or anyone listening go on Google, type in SLS core stage green run hot fire testing. You can
Say
put it
that
on
again?
YouTube.
That's
SLS
awesome.
core stage green run.
Oh, it popped right up.
Yeah, and so there's videos of it on YouTube, but basically it's the first stage of this rocket. It's
Okay.
got 4 liquid oxygen, liquid hydrogen engines on it.
Yep.
And it basically gets the payload out of the atmosphere. And so
Ooh, I got a Budweiser commercial playing first.
there you go. It's for your crawfish boils. So basically, Boeing built this rocket, and we put it on our test stand and filled it up with, I think it's like 200,000 gallons of liquid oxygen, 500,000 gallons of liquid hydrogen, and lit these 4 engines and let them run.
So this is insane.
Dude, look at I just
You sent me video. We got to get the videos that he sent me on Instagram, or maybe it was email, one of the two, maybe Instagram, of this stuff.
94,000 horsepower.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Well, I think that's what that stands for. I don't
So
know.
they're building this stuff on paper, for lack of a better term, and then using past data, past projects, and then what you're kind of doing is then managing the build and the launch of that. So essentially, you are like, and correct me if I'm wrong, you would be like the GC on a larger project, and then you're managing a bunch of subcontractors and vendors to make this happen.
So back up 1 second. We do not launch anything at Stennis Space Center. If something launches from here, it's a bad day. We do static hot fire testing. So bolt it down, fire it.
So it's
make sure-
trying to launch.
I feel like
It's
that's
trying
even
to.
more impressive.
Yeah.
Because launching it would be so much easier
Guys, we
than
need to
trying
build
to not launch it.
We got to build a rocket that's going to push, I don't even know how much a shuttle weighs, into the atmosphere. But we got to bolt it down.
Grab some more ratchet straps.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the test stand that we tested that rocket on, I want to say it was down rated from like 7 million pounds of thrust to a couple million, just because this test stand was built in the 60s for Atlas or for Saturn core stage testing. So just over time we tested on it and had to downrate it. But yeah, our structures are pretty robust. But going back to your question, so there's a lot of people who manage these projects. We have project managers who are basically the interface between NASA and our customer, our test customer. On the money side of thing, we have project engineers who are the interface between NASA and the customer on technical issues. My group is the group who we're more boots on the ground, implementing everything that's fed to us from the customer. They say, hey, we need this temperature, this pressure, this flow rate of these fluids. Our design and analysis guys design those systems, and my group is the one who implement those systems. We build them up. So we're writing the work instructions for our mechanics to run the tubing, install the piping, the valves. We activate all these systems, so doing flows through them, whether it be nitrogen, helium, hydrogen, oxygen. whatever the commodity is, we do activation testing. We look at the data. We say, hey, we need to adjust this valve, change this orifice, this, that, and the other. And then once the test article gets to us, we're hands-on with getting the test article integrated into the test stands and then doing all of the testing from then on.
What are you using helium for?
So we use a lot of hydrogen for different projects. And
Hydrogen's explosive, right?
yes. Yeah.
Like-
So liquid hydrogen is one of the fuels that's used in the industry. Liquid hydrogen has a boiling point that's cold enough to freeze pretty much every other gas aside from helium. So we use helium for basically running purges and inerting hydrogen systems is our primary use of it. Because if you're to put nitrogen into a hydrogen system and then run liquid hydrogen through it, you're literally going to have a frozen ball of nitrogen in that line. And that poses some major issues for us.
They had to find all this out the hard way.
Yeah, I'm glad I wasn't in the 70s.
And then it's
60s
like,
and
well, how are we going to fix this?
Right.
I'm watching right now a video. It's just like a looping 15-second clip of a future moon rocket completing its critical hot fire test. And it's like you see the size of that like testing rig that they have set up, and then the plume of whatever sort of exhaust vapor or smoke coming out of it that's like 30 times the size of it. It's insane.
Yeah, when we tested the core stage, I forget who posted it, like NOAA or one of the weather sites posted. You could see the cloud that we produced testing that rocket from satellite imagery.
Yeah, because it actually will put a cloud up in the sky, doesn't it?
Yeah, so for that test, they're hydrogen oxygen fueled engines, so the combustion product of that's just water vapor. So we literally made a giant rain cloud.
I mean, that's what I'm watching right now.
Yep.
So there. All right. This is the craziest conversation I've ever had. So,
It's just nothing I've ever even thought about.
and I don't even understand like how to ask these questions, but you just said the byproduct is just water vapor.
Right.
So, is that like meaning I'm thinking about all right, a vehicle, right? Like you have all these emission issues with like gas-fired combustion engines,
Right.
diesel, things like that. Diesel, same thing. So you're telling me this rocket doesn't have poor emissions, like it's just producing rain?
Yeah, so the core stage itself, obviously there's going to be solid rocket boosters. That's a whole different story. That's out of my realm of knowledge. But the core stage itself and the four engines that's on it, the only byproduct is water. Because you're burning hydrogen with oxygen. That's the only two things getting burned.
And how are you burning them? Like what's causing them to burn?
Pressure, probably.
Science. That's where the rocket scientists actually come in. But basically, it gets pumped into the combustion chamber of the engine. They have some form of igniter. It ignites it, and then you're off to the races.
It just doesn't even. I don't get it.
So where is like the crossover between working with these rocket scientists and then working with the engineers? Because there has to be a fair amount of overlap there, right? Because I didn't realize this until I became a science major in college, but how much of science is mathematics based, where I was like, whoa, hold on. I thought I was going to be learning about animals and like nature and shit, and then I'm just doing these like complex math equations and formulas and like chemistry and physics that I was like, yeah, this is not what I think of science. But like, how much overlap is there, and how much, like, you have to be fairly competent as to what's going on from like the scientific part of this to be able to do your job well.
Yeah, we definitely have, and it's different for each program that comes through. Every engine is different. So we're constantly learning a new system, a new way to ignite like this one little widget inside this engine ignites the engine this way versus this other program. It's all basically around the same sort of concepts. You need a fuel, an oxidizer, a way to light it, and a way to direct that pressure in a certain direction. So there, like you were saying, there is a good amount of overlap between the actual rocket scientists who are designing things at a very small scale all the way out to the whole rocket and what we do. We obviously have to have some amount of knowledge of those systems to be able to help them get them started, run them, and basically develop those systems.
You just said some knowledge, and I want to, and forgive me, like this, I'm just going to relate it to like building cars, like the production, like the assembly line. The people in that assembly line don't need to know how a car works.
Right.
They don't, they are asked to do a job. It's very, very structured. It's like, hey, this is your job. You go from this point to that point, and then it moves on to the next person. Am I right thinking that this is similar in the sense like you are hired for a job, and you're the process in which, and again, I don't know, but the process in which you need to take that, like it's all mapped out for you?
Not necessarily. So basically, for the car analogy, just imagine when Ford or whoever went to an EcoBoost engine. You have the design engineers who've designed that engine.
True. Right.
And at some point, you have to run it for the first time.
Right.
And
So
it's not going to run perfect the first time.
So
you gotta run it.
you're sitting in the room with the EcoBoost, running it and listening to all the shit it does,
Yeah.
and then offering suggestions on how to fix it.
Right. We're basically the dyno operators.
Yeah, I got you.
So we're the ones hooking it up to the dyno and giving it fuel, basically.
Yeah,
So-
you have the dangerous job where they're like, listen, we've never done this before, but you guys try it. You guys
Make
try
sure
it
to-
first, and then if it works, we'll try it.
Just make sure it's bolted down,
Yeah.
and use the grade 8 ones. Those are stronger. Okay, so thinking about school and college and getting your master's, like what you're doing today, do you think that you could have done that without getting your master's, and part B, without going to college?
To an extent. I think the big thing with going to college and getting my master's, it's not necessarily the subject matter that I was actually studying, but developing that ability to take these abstract concepts and synthesize them into a solution for a problem. So a lot of what we do on a daily basis is problem solve why systems aren't working how we expect them to work, different ways to get commodities to a test article in a safe and efficient manner. And a lot of that takes just being able to think about one problem from every angle. And then obviously there is the base subject matter of known statics, dynamics, fluid flow, heat transfer. All of that does come into play.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest driver or the biggest connection from schooling and what I do today is just that ability to problem solve from different angles.
Yeah, it's problem solving with like a completely different set of parameters that like I think of problem solving. Like for me, problem solving tends to take a fairly logical sequence. Like
Right.
everyone thinks it's fairly complex, but then if you like break it down, it's just a bunch of little decisions that, you know, make one larger decision. But if you don't have the background knowledge and like the basis of what you're dealing with, I think that it would be fairly overwhelming to walk in and experience, even though you may have the intelligence to pick that up and learn. I think that even just being exposed to that type of stuff in the first place would help immensely, because I think you would be so overwhelmed walking into your job day one if you were never exposed to that crap before, no matter how smart you are.
Right. And I mean, I could even go back to the issues you were having a while back with your paint and primer and caulking. And first off, being able to identify that there was a problem,
Yeah.
and then being able to back out of that, the best way to go about finding what the root cause is, how to avoid that root cause going forward, and develop a system to where you can effectively and efficiently get that paint system back on track, get your built-ins finished, painted, and looking up to your standard. Because we hold very high standards for what we do. Obviously, it's a lot of stuff we do is highly safety critical, and just, we're dealing with high pressures and very volatile commodities. So we have to be right all the time.
So how often are you guys doing these tests? Like these tests,
So it depends on the program. Like the core stage videos that y'all were just watching a minute ago, that was that was basically one test series with that vehicle. We did two wet dresses where we filled it up with propellants and then just drained it. And then we did a hot fire attempt. We did two different hot fires. One attempt we got so far, and then a red line kicked us out. We shut it down. And then the second hot fire attempt, we went full duration. So that's basically 4 tests for that one program. But stepping down to the engine level, just a single engine, we'll do, I don't work on the engine. So we have different test stands, do different things. The test stand that runs just the single engines currently, I don't work there day to day, so I don't really know these numbers very well, but we'll test the same engine maybe once every 2-3 weeks when we're in a test series. And then at our component level test stand, which we do engine components as well as smaller scale engines, we'll do tests. We'll run 5 tests a week, or test every day, pending hardware holds up. But we can even do multiple tests a day, depending. So as the scale gets smaller, our test schedule basically ramps up.
So when you start these tests, are you have a basic idea of what this end product is going to be? Are you testing individual components to like a certain limit and then being like, okay, we can move to the next limit? Like we made it here. What does that look like?
Yeah, so for the component level testing, basically we'll have a customer come in with a pre-burner, a main combustion chamber, a pump, whatever it may be, whatever component for their engine or rocket it is. And they'll give us a box of pressures and temperatures they want to see, whether it be inside the engine or what we're feeding it, the commodities we're feeding it. And we'll basically go and test all corners of the box, in the center of the box. Basically, they give us a test matrix.
Yeah.
And basically the limit to which they want to push their hardware is up to them.
So essentially you guys are just able to test this in your space in a safe way without them being like, not that they would actually be this way, but like in their garage being like, let's see what this bad boy actually has.
Yeah, correct. So that's part of what NASA has done here at Stennis Space Center, is develop these test stands where it's more or less plug and play. Customer will bring us a test article, everything's set up in a safe manner to where we can run those test articles and see what they'll do. So
then are they using that money to do the research that they're doing along with taxpayer dollars?
So the money side of things is out of my realm of expertise, but we'll have, like, private industry will come to us. They know we have these test stands. Yeah. They'll pay us for a test series.
Sure.
And then, so the core stage, the SLS stuff, that's sort of separate from the private industry testing to an extent.
So you guys basically developed all of these test, what do you call them? Test what?
Stands.
Test stands for your own products. And then it's like, hey, if you guys want to test your stuff on this, we'll run it for you.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure on the history of our component level test stand, but as far as our big test stands, they were all developed in the Saturn era back in the 60s.
Yeah.
For the Saturn Apollo missions.
That's the type of stuff that you just don't even think about, where it's like, all right, you want to get into private industry, rocket building. And it's like, okay, so you have the ability to build a rocket, but now you don't have the ability to test that rocket.
Right.
Which it's like, obviously, I would like the testing is probably more expensive than the building of the rockets, because it's like, if you could build a rocket, then you should be able to afford to test it. But like the testing of it must be way more complex or more expensive, that you're now going elsewhere to test your stuff.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the facilities that we've built here are unique, and just to replicate them, like you're saying, it'd be a very large investment.
Yeah. So what's your, like, to dumb it down some, what's your like day-to-day operations? What are you doing?
So anything from writing work instructions for our mechanics to go out and install new systems or change valves or change instrumentation. So we take a lot of data, so we're constantly changing out calibrated pressure sensors and temperature sensors, all that sort of stuff. So anything from writing that paperwork and being out in the field with those guys to sitting on a computer console cycling valves for 8-12 hours a day.
And are those subcontractors, or do you guys own those employees, or both?
So we have our prime contractor. They provide all of our labor force for the most part. And then for different construction projects, a lot of times we'll bring in subs to do like large scale welding and dirt work and stuff like that. Like concrete, we usually bring in offsite contractors, just different stuff like that.
So then you're managing most of them?
Yeah, so my group doesn't necessarily manage the construction side as far as facilities construction, like buildings and roads and stuff like that. But we'll work hand in hand with like heavy metal contractors who are coming in and building the structures that we're going to bolt test articles to, stuff like that.
I guess, again, this is just what I kind of indicative of me never thinking about this, but what you're doing as a mechanical engineer is probably not that much different than what like a structural engineer would be doing for when a bridge gets built.
Right.
It's just my brain doesn't work that way, but like, you know, there's so many questions that come to mind, but like for people who are listening, where it may seem overly complex, I'm sure that there's a lot of aspects of this job that are very intense and very complex, but like your role would be that of an engineer on any sort of job that we do: commercial construction, infrastructure, road work, bridge work, where you're working alongside of all of these tradesmen, ensuring that things are getting done the way that they need to safely, and then problem solving when things aren't going right, and then figuring out, like you said, problem solve, like, all right, this isn't working, what do we need to do now? And then managing the sub trades or the contractors to make those changes so that you can run another test.
Right. And at the same time, we're working with our customer, whoever brought us the test article, to say, hey, this is where we're at on this build up. We're targeting this date to be ready to get into testing or activation. And then test article gets to us, we get it integrated into our test stand. And then from there, a lot of what we do is operating hand in hand with our customer, going through the test profiles, making sure we have everything set up how they expect it, how we expect it, and lighten these things up.
So you may not have the answer to this, but do you have any idea what the pricing structure on something like this? Because like everything's one off, right? So it's not like, oh, you want to test your rocket. Like this is where we start. Like that, the amount of work that would go in, there's no way of quantifying that.
Right. So we basically have systems built up to a certain point, and then from that point, everything's custom out to the test article. And some things we can use from one program to the next and save our customer a little bit of money. But a lot of it is new custom pipe needs to get made and installed. And so basically, and this is, again, out of my lane a bit, but we basically give them a number for buildup and activation. We give them a number to run X amount of tests, and that's paying for test crews, commodities, basically everything you need to run tests for 10 tests in a series. And then we also have a chunk set aside for demoing out all that custom built pipe to get us back to our known facility interface, basically.
Do you like what you do?
I love it.
Do you?
Yeah.
I feel like you would have to.
I'm looking up the costs. I typed in how much does it cost to test a rocket in space, and it was. I'm coming up with SpaceX offers competitively pricing for rides. So this is like a ride in their rocket. I guess they're launching people in space. It says all meals included, $62 million.
That's chump change. No, yeah, the numbers.
I'll take 2.
I catch glimpses of the numbers every now and again, just in different presentations that are going on there. They're big numbers.
And that's the thing for me right now that's insane is right now there's not necessarily a return on that where it's like, well, we're just seeing what's out there.
Right.
You know, where like investing that much and getting a return or being able to kind of, pull out some sort of resource. I guess it's all going towards that, hopefully at some point. But just the amount of money and time and energy that's spent is insane. Like I can't imagine what that costs all of these companies to be building these things and then testing these things.
Yeah, that's one aspect of the industry that I still haven't wrapped my head around.
I mean, even like, right, you have all of these investors. Like you think of any sort of startup, you have all these investors, and a lot of these companies, like the new startups, they'll expect like a 10 or 15 year red period, and then they'll start recouping on their investment. And like at this point, it's, since the 60s, 70s, and we're 70 years into it right now. And it's like, when are you going to recoup this investment? Right, you're talking about big numbers.
Yeah, that's definitely one thing I don't understand.
Yeah. You also, I know you had mentioned it in your email, but you also have a YouTube channel?
I do.
What is that?
So it's called South Coast Fabrication and Outdoors. It's basically just me goofing off on the weekends. Basically, so I've always really enjoyed video and photography and that sort of stuff. And sort of when my daughter was born, I got big into watching. Basically, all I did was binge watch YouTube videos, getting up at night and just putting on a YouTube video, helping her get back to sleep, stuff like that. And throughout the days, y'all know how those days go. And I just said, might as well give this a try. I'm doing this stuff on the weekends, set up a tripod, set up a camera, and film myself cutting the grass. And basically I wanted to learn how to edit videos, film them, all this sort of stuff. And I'm still not good at it. I'll tell you that much right now. But it's basically started out as that, and I've gained a little bit of a following. I think I got 1,200 or so subscribers right now. But I've really enjoyed it. Just learning the video side of it, and now starting to learn the sort of the commercial side of YouTube itself, and ad revenue and SEO and all that sort of stuff. It's just a whole another world for me, and I'm enjoying the ride so far.
So go ahead, Nick.
How I think about like what you do for work, right? And where, like for me, I'm a builder, so eventually I'm going to build my own house. Like it's, that's the skill I choose to sell, and then I turn around and I benefit from it.
Right.
Is there something that what you do with rockets that you could turn around and do, like apply that to, say, a hobby or your everyday life? Like I guess where I'm going with that is like I came across, I think you have like a golf cart, a V-twin golf cart, and I'm like, why doesn't he build a mini rocket for that thing?
Yeah, I could go all Colin Furs on everybody and start building rocket powered golf carts and whatnot.
But I'm being like, I'm half kidding, half serious. I'm sure I'm sure you can't. I'm sure there's something that prevents people from just building a rocket in their garage. But
Yeah, like we were saying earlier, it's expensive. Like
Yeah.
even just to get the materials to build even a
Mhm.
small scale something or another. I mean,
Sure.
it's definitely expensive to get the pipe and
but can't you get like spare parts?
Just the
and-
left-overs.
yeah, like the stuff that
Yeah.
the stuff that failed, and you
Straight
just come
probably
back
get
and
a flagged for that, Nick.
straight to jail.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that not allowed to do that.
Is that
Yeah,
a
man.
NASA fuel line on your golf cart? Let's go, buddy.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think part of what I do and some of the stuff I put on YouTube is just the fabrication side. I still have a small scale fabrication business, and I'll do custom one-off jobs for friends, family. If anybody comes to me, I'll look at their job. And I think just using engineering thinking and techniques and doing different fabrication jobs like that, just building random stuff sort of scratches that itch at home.
Is that, being that you have a government job, is that one of the benefits of that? Are you able to leave work, leave that at work, go home, unwind, kind of check out from work, and then go back the next day? Or is your job something that you feel you have to, work extra hours, take home with you?
To an extent, it depends on what we have going on at any particular time. But we can't test rocket engines from the house for the most part. So
Yeah.
a lot of it stays in the gate whenever we leave. But we're also, within my group, we're also texting each other, hey, I thought of this for this issue we had after hours and stuff like that. But for the most part, we're able to turn it off and leave it at work.
Yeah, I guess I just don't. It seems like it would be a very demanding and mentally taxing job for you, especially when things aren't going right. Like, I think of anything in my life where if I know how to solve the problem, it's no big deal. Like, that's
Right.
the challenge for me. It's like, I know what I have to do to fix this. I can turn it off, pick it up the next day. But when I leave work and I'm having an issue that I don't yet know how to solve, that's where I can't turn it off. And it seems to me that everything in your job would be a problem that you don't know how to solve. And I feel like I would have a really hard time just leaving work and being like, well, that rocket it was completely wrong this time. We'll show back up tomorrow and figure it out,
No, yeah, you're definitely right. There are definitely times like that when we've had major issues that we just can't figure out in a day. And like you were saying, that sort of stuff comes home with you and think about it until you're too tired to keep your eyes open and pop up first thing in the morning. It's still on your mind.
Yeah.
So it sort of comes in waves though.
So you think the YouTube channel is a way to kind of check out from that and just, if you were doing fabrication and you were working with your hands at this point, you're on a job where you're probably not allowed to be working with your hands, and there's people in place that are, have whatever testing that they do to be able to work that type of job. Like, you're just there managing those people. Is the YouTube and the fabrication on the side kind of scratching that itch for you that you still have to be working with your hands some?
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely a creative outlet, and that hands-on, get my hands dirty, burn my fingertips off again.
Yeah.
Sort of, it definitely ticks that box for me, because that's one thing, especially with having kids these days. It's harder to get that time, and so I try to make the most of it when I'm doing it.
Yeah.
And it sort of comes here and there, but it's definitely a big driver for why I still have the fabrication business and take side jobs and stuff like that. And I think the fact that it is more of a hobby and a side gig at this point, I can enjoy it more than I did when I was just hammering
Full-time.
out those crawfish tables.
Yeah.
I hated turning on the welder in the morning
Yeah.
when I was doing it just one after another. But now, when I can go do just a aluminum stand for a propane fryer that my buddy has, to when I can just go out there and bang that out in a couple days, and everything's different, I think it's a whole different ball game.
Yeah. How many kids do you have?
2.
Okay. Because I mean, I even look at working full time right now. You have a fairly serious job, and having kids and having a family, to have the time for a separate YouTube channel, regardless of the following that you have, it takes a lot of time. Like, not only are you doing the task, you're recording the task, you're documenting that task, editing it, and then putting it on YouTube. So that, to me, would kind of tell me that it's you have to enjoy that, because if not, like, there's just not enough time in a day that you would be doing that if it weren't something that you enjoy. Unless it was, you were making money through YouTube, or like, yeah, this is a second job for me.
No, yeah, you're spot on there. It's definitely, I definitely only do it because I enjoy it. And that's probably why it's not, I don't make super high quality videos. I'm not pumping out content every day.
Yeah.
I maybe get out 2 videos a week, and it's just, I just enjoy it. I enjoy just thinking about where can I set this camera up to film myself mow 3 acres of grass, stuff like that. And it just going back to what we were saying earlier, it's just that creative release from the seriousness of what I do every day at work. Just being able to goof off, film myself goofing off, and I don't know, just something about the creativity I really enjoy.
Yeah. I feel like I'm going to find a way, Nick, that we can get the videos that he sent me to be able to post, if you were allowed.
No, yeah. So I think everything I sent you is already in public domain. It was
okay.
Published by.
I don't want to be like posting videos. No, you can't put that out.
Man, I wish I could video stuff that we actually do on a day-to-day basis and post it, but
yeah.
Can you talk about it, or you can't even talk about it?
To an extent. I mean, to the extent that I've been
like,
talking about it.
What do you do? What are you doing during the day that you wish you could share that you can't, that you can't film?
I mean, just a lot of the operations we do.
And what's the reasoning?
A lot of the stuff we're doing is proprietary for these different private industries, private space companies. So we're doing a lot of R&D testing for them, and so it's definitely, we don't talk about specifics of what we're doing on a day-to-day basis, and
because of competition.
Yeah, competition, being proprietary, and to an extent, everything's ITAR controlled. So to an extent,
it's what
security.
controlled? Sorry,
ITAR. I don't know the acronym off the top of my head, but it's the
ITAR.
Yeah, may have
so
to look that one up, but I should know that. I'm probably
there are some of your own rockets that you guys are testing, right?
No.
So the SLS core stage, and even at the time that we tested it, Boeing, the private company Boeing, still owned it when we tested it. It was signed over to NASA, I believe, when it shipped to Kennedy Space Center.
So is that something that you guys wanted built to your spec and you had them build it?
Yeah, so NASA basically put out a contract to bid for this rocket. Boeing won that bid, or they won that contract, and so they built it per the spec provided by NASA.
Because I feel like all of this would be so proprietary, but then you guys are like testing other people's rockets, and I don't know. Like, is there stuff that you can pull from testing other people's rockets that you're like, maybe we should try this? Or are you guys like kind of leading the charge where they're pulling it from you?
I mean, there's a lot of stuff that we know that Company A doesn't know about Company B.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's just part of being a civil servant, is we're basically
But you're a Company C. So it's like you get Company A.
Well, we're not a company. We're a government agency.
I feel like that was like a really diplomatic response. Like you were just like, oh, we're not a company. We're just taking everything A and B is doing, and then happen to be building a rocket as well.
Right. So I don't know. Whenever NASA put out that contract to have SLS core stage built, I don't know to what level of detail
Sure,
was in those
yeah.
specs.
Yeah.
We may have said we need a rocket of this dimension with this that can take this payload to this orbit at this efficiency level. And that's what they came up with.
If I got an
Oh.
email saying that, I'd be like, dude, I don't even know where to start. Man.
Dude, this is what's crazy to me. It's like you're building these things with all of this proprietary information. So much of it is probably secret. And then, like, it's the type of thing in my head where it's like, no, you're just going to build this yourself so nobody knows. But it's so complex that you have to enlist the help of however many different companies and people. But I guess at the same time, like, there's so much that goes into it that not one person is going to fully understand all of that. Like, even if they sent you like the plans for it, that you just need so many moving parts to make that happen.
Right.
Like, you could send me that, Nick, and I'd be like, I don't know what to do with this. This makes no sense to me.
Yeah, it's like if y'all are working for two different architects on two different jobs, you see what both of them are doing, but you're not necessarily
That's fair. Yeah, that's a fair point.
taking every detail that architect A is doing it, applying it to architect B's job or vice versa.
No, but part of me, and with that reference, part of me is working with all these architects and thinking, all right, I like this, I like that, I like this.
Right.
Maybe I should start my own firm.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
You know, it's like, what if I take all the good and just start my own team? But
So you guys said that you have a prime that you use for most of your, like a prime contractor for most of your jobs.
Right.
Is that something that you bid out yearly? Is there like a certain length of contract with them?
I don't know if it's yearly or bi-yearly or what, but there is a term on it.
And what's the turnover like? Are you guys typically using the same prime, or do you guys have a different company that you work with?
That's sort of out of my realm of expertise, but generally, I mean, basically, if you go talk to the mechanics and electricians and different managers we have around, they've been out here for 30 years.
Yeah.
The boots on the ground have been around for a long time, whether they're getting picked up whenever we switch contracts,
Yeah.
or if just the upper level of our prime contractors getting shaken up and a new name getting put on it between contracts.
It's the same people.
Yeah, the boots on the ground for the most part are the same people.
Because that's what I'm thinking in my head. Like, when I'm looking for subs and I want a certain caliber of sub, like, the stakes are never that high. Ideally, you're looking for the best people, but it's like if you have a prime contractor and you're working in a facility doing what you're doing, you have to ensure that you're getting the best people, that you're getting qualified people who are showing up. There's a lot on the line. And how are you ensuring to kind of keep that quality standard there if, you know, you have a prime that has a 6-month contract and then it's switching, or you're putting it out to bid because it's a government job. And then, like, those people are kind of shifting and changing every 6 months. I feel like it'd be very difficult to put out a consistent product, and even just from an operational standpoint.
Yeah, no, that definitely be the case. And we do have some amount of turnover. I mean, we will staff up for like the core stage project. I keep going back to that because that's what I've done a lot of my time here has been on that project. But there was a group of guys who were hired basically fresh to come in, work on that project, and unfortunately, whenever the rocket shipped to Kennedy, a portion of that crew that was hired on got laid off because we no longer had that amount of work going on. So just sort of part of the industry there. But
how long was that project for you guys?
I mean, it's on the scale of 5+ years.
So you're getting this and it's 5 years worth of testing?
No, so it was like we had the rocket here for about a year. I think it was
Okay.
only here for about 13 months, but just from initial concept from NASA saying, "Hey, we're going to build a new moon rocket, and we're going to test it at Stennis." Basically, from there until the rocket shipped off, it's on the order of between 5 and 10 years, somewhere in there.
And then I would assume that you're able to use a lot of your equipment, but then being that everything is one off, you kind of have to retrofit things to work for each specific job.
Yeah, definitely.
Imagine working on something for 10 years.
That's what I'm thinking.
But like,
I'm just
thinking,
launched. It's done. All right, let's pack it up. Just like wipe your hands, pull the drop cloths.
Briou,
See ya.
You talked about being in the car industry, working on cars, putting lifts on Jeeps and stuff like that. That was a huge hobby of mine when I was in high school and college, and same thing. I was taking motors apart, souping them up, building transmission. Like, I love that stuff.
Right.
And I have this Silverado that it's 2002 regular cab short bed. It was, at the time, it was 4-wheel drive. It was the lowest 4-wheel drive. I had nitrous in it. It was like, it was stupid. It was just like this fun truck. And the story is that I blew the transmission up like 3 times. Finally, I put another transmission in, and I was like, I'm just going to take it easy because I need to drive this thing to school. And the transmission failed again. And long story short, I brought it to a shop. The guy that built the transmission was a hack. Where am I going with this story? Oh, my point is so at that point I decided, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to bring it into my garage, and I'm taking it 100% apart, and I'm building my dream truck. And I started doing that, and I would keep getting to certain points, and I'd be like, man, I just learned so much these last 12 months. And for example, the frame of that truck, I learned all of this information about geometry and how to build better suspension. And I'm like, I got 12 months into the frame, and I literally sawzalled it out of the bottom of my truck one day, and I started from scratch. And I did that 3 times because I would spend all of this time. I'm thinking like 10 years is a long time, but I've also been working on this truck for probably 10 years. A good majority of the last 5, it has been 0% effort because of my children. But still, it's like you're 10 years into building a rocket. It's like, and that amount, like, you're not constantly starting over because you would never finish it. But I don't know. I have no question here. I'm just outlining what.
I mean, I'm sure like you said, there's a basis, so you have these starting points, but then the part that is difficult for me is just the minor tweaks where
and how they impact everything.
I know, and like everything and obviously they've been doing it long enough that they have certain fallbacks and like data points and reference points and benchmarks that they can go back to. But I even think of it as far as like dirt biking, where it's like you raise your fork tubes up 2.5 millimeters and the bike handles completely differently, or like you drop your back end and like all of these little things then affect the other end of the bike and how they handle. And it's so overwhelming when I'm dealing with something that's like that simple. And then you think of it where it's like something that you built from scratch for 5 years, 10 years, and all of these little tweaks that you make have such massive, there's so changes come from that, and they affect everything after it. And that for me is almost so overwhelming, where it'd be like, when is this going to end? Like, when are we going to reach where we want to be? Because you change one thing and then I got to change 6 more things now.
Right. And that's definitely the case for us on the longer term buildups. Like for the core stage testing, we were in buildup for 4 or 5 years, and they would change one little number on their interface requirements, and we'd have to rip hundreds of feet of tubing out and rebuild it with a different size tubing, or change a bunch of valves out, or different orifice sizes.
Back to Home Depot.
Right back to Home Depot.
Reno run.
So it's sort of the running joke. Every day we have daily meetings. What did we get done today? What are we going to do tomorrow? And like the running joke was, it all pays the same to run that same run of tubing 2 times, but 2 different sizes because interface requirement changed.
But how do you keep the morale up at that point? Like, I guess the people you have are doing it and they understand that that's going to be the case. But like, I think of it from our job, Nick, where it's like you have a sub rip something out for 5 years in a row, and they're gonna go jump off a bridge.
A sub, forget like my team.
Yeah.
I've been on, we've talked about it a ton, like this whole, like my whole rip it out mentality, and I thought that the guys didn't care. It's like I'd show up, be like, we could do that better, rip it out, do it again, and they're getting paid. Like I'm the one investing in it. But I had a conversation one day with a bunch of them, and they were like, man, it really just kind of sucks that you keep doing that. And I'm like, what do you mean? I'm like, I don't know, like we work really hard and then you come in and tell us that we, like, you want to rip it out and do it again. And I was like, okay. And they're like, can you just elaborate? And I had to explain like where I was coming from, and just, kind of instill in them that, hey, listen, I want you to have the opportunity to do your best work. And if I'm making you rip it out, it's not that you did a bad job. It's just that we now have the skill set to do it better.
Right. No, it's definitely, that's definitely a thing in this industry, is like you're saying, keeping morale up through these long-term projects where you're running the same run of tubing 3-4 times, or you're changing the same valve out 3 times, or whatever it is. Part of it is that's just how this industry goes. That's part of research and development. As you dial in what you need, your requirements change, you have to change your systems. But there's definitely some periods of basically depression amongst the team. And that's another part of what my group does, is we sort of manage the emotional and mental side of it, whether we know we're doing that or not, but just keeping everybody going, because we know we have to meet this deadline, we have to meet this interface condition, this pressure, temperature, flow rate, whatever it is, for this deadline. Otherwise, this project's dead. So that's another part of what we do.
That's the strenuous
basis.
Goal,
right?
Is that if you don't hit your target, then the project dies. Jobs.
It can. It's not necessarily as dramatic as that every time, but
no. But it, like, to relate it to our industry, I think about renovations, and for example, and we're working on a project right now that has increased in scope. And when we started the job, it was like, hey, this is going to be a partial demolition, a partial gut, and then we finish that, and then we walk the job, and people are like, well, why don't we do this room too?
Right.
And then it's like, and then it's like, you know what? Let's do that too, or let's change that. And then it's like, well, now we gotta. It just, you keep, for lack of better terms, fucking with it, where it's like you're just going back and doing more and more. Or it's like if you're building something and you're constantly like into the weeds or into the details, and it's like, there's a lot of times our projects that I sit back, I'm like, man, that project became so complex.
Right.
Like looking back, that project could have been way more simple. Even our Rhode Island project, I feel that way. It's like it's an amazing project, and there's a ton of detail in it, but there's times where I'm like, man, I just feel like a lot of things became more complex than they needed to be. Right. And it was because we were in the moment thinking about that particular detail. And we resolved something in that moment, but by resolving that, we ended up making other issues that we had to deal with later on, and not just saying, hey, you know what, instead of fixing this issue because of that, let's go all the way back to step one and make sure that, we set ourselves up for us not to run into this issue.
Right.
I feel like that's where especially what you do, Nick, is probably very similar to what Briou's dealing with, where, yeah, you're building houses and there's certain things that you can pull from, there's certain baselines that you have, and there's certain principles of building. But when you're building highly custom one-off projects, there's so many subtle differences that it's almost like the first time every single time that you do it, where it's such a learning curve. And that, like I said, that you have certain reference points that you can start at and you can stop at, and you can always fall back on. But when you're doing something for the first time and it's very unique, it's not going to be a very efficient process. It's not going to be one and done. You know, you're not going to knock it out of the park, and there's always going to be room for improvement. And I think that on those projects, it's so important to maintain that positive attitude and ensuring that you are hitting little benchmarks where you're celebrating those victories, and ensure that everyone knows, while the movement forward may seem slow, that it is happening. You know, there's definitely setbacks and there's issues and there's a lot of problems, but you're still making progress even with them. Because if not, it's like, we've been on this job for how long and this is where we are. But you have to ensure that that's just part of this. When you're doing something for the first time and you're in, you know, R&D, and you're pushing the envelope of what can be done, like, you're not going to fly through a job.
Right. And I think that's one of the things that we harp on all the time on these longer term projects, is like, when we got that full duration hot fire with the core stage, like, it was an unbelievable feeling. Like, it obviously it's different than whenever you have kids, but sort of same, not quite the same level, but it I mean, it was up there.
Dude, you put more work, you put a lot more hours into that rocket ship than you did making that kid.
Well,
whoa, Ty.
You know?
I did,
whoa,
yeah.
buddy.
But yeah, I mean, we've teams of 100+ people who've worked for X amount of years for that one 500-second test, and like, just getting that done, it's an incredible feeling. And I know everyone who was involved with that, from whatever point they were brought on in that project all the way through the hot fire, that's the sort of stuff where going forward we can say, hey, remember we did this, we ran this run of tubing 8 times, but we hot fired.
Yeah.
We got it done. I mean, it's just basically chasing that high of the successful hot fires is sort of part of how we keep going in those down times, you know?
Yeah, which is one of the reasons why I'd asked you earlier, like, how often are you kind of able to run these tests? Because if it were once every 5 years, I don't know how much light at the end of the tunnel that would provide to keep people on board. Like, I think that being that you have the ability to be testing other things for other investors and other companies, I think that probably breaks up a lot of what you did for 5 years, where it's like, yeah, we got this running, or, you know, it was a 6-month job, which probably seems like, yeah, we knocked that out. It was short time, or, you know, this one we tested for a month and we turned it around quickly, where it's like, if you were just building one house every 5 years, I think that you'd probably be better off breaking it up and having some little small victories in between there to kind of keep morale up and keep people engaged, instead of being like, because when you get done that one house and it's been 5 years, or that one hot fire, and now it's like, oh, we have 5 more years to go before we feel this good again. You know, you need some stuff thrown into the mix that kind of gets you going again.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think it varies from person to person, obviously. Some people are good with, I'm just going to run tubing every day. I'm going to come into work and run tubing every day. Some people are good with that, and that's where it falls on the supervisory level, to make sure we have the people we need in different areas. So my group, we're sort of split up. We have some people who stay on the bigger test stands on longer term projects, some people who stay on the smaller scale test stands doing the high turnover, high intensity test schedules, stuff like that. And then some of us who sort of float around and sort of go where the need is. And luckily I'm in that boat. And I think it suits my personality. I think my supervisor's done a good job putting each of us mechanical engineers where we need to be and moving us around as required. But yeah, if I wasn't able to go over and test the smaller scale, high intensity test schedule stuff, it'd definitely be a lot harder for me to make it those 5 years to get to the one hot fire.
It'd be like when you're a kid and you like have Christmas or Halloween, your birthday, and then you're like, I have another year before my birthday again. It's like, 364, see 363.
And like my birthday's in January, so we'd hit Christmas January and then like nothing for.
Yeah, mine's January 2nd, so it'd always be like everything all at once, and then it's like, oh no, I'd get super depressed after the holidays, like when I was the little kid, where it's like you're so excited for everything, and then it happens all at once, and then it's like, well, now what?
Right.
Valentine's Day?
Now we got Father's Day.
Yeah, that's true. Father's Day is the big one. I find it so interesting what you do, and I do like having people on who are kind of have different, are coming from a different industry or have a different perspective, because I think that there are so many overlaps with what we do. And while it may be more complex or more moving parts, a lot of the issues that you deal with and the people that you deal with and the management, and there's a lot of parallels, and it winds up not being as different as you think. You know, when we first get on this podcast and you start talking about what you're doing, and it's almost too much to dig into, but then when you kind of speak to the nuts and bolts of what makes people tick and what makes your job successful, and kind of what you do on a daily basis, it's not that much different than what we do.
No, for sure. I mean, a lot of it for us is managing expectations between our test customer and what we can do in a day, managing expectations of what we expect our mechanics to get done in a day. And basically it's people management and material management.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Y'all are managing carpenters, subcontractors, plumbers, electricians. We're doing the same thing. Welders, mechanics, who are basically our version of plumbers.
Yeah.
Electricians. And then our materials are stainless steel piping, tubing, and valves, and liquid oxygen and hydrogen. Y'all are working with wood and concrete.
Yeah. What you said that you're starting a home renovation?
So we're getting into a home build.
Okay.
Yeah, we should have our 100% construction documents here in the next week or two.
Cool. Is it on your existing property, or do you guys buy new property?
Yeah, so we bought a piece of property back in 2016. And so we're just getting, 18. And we were just sitting on it. We had a house we were good with, and then had our second kid here a little over a year ago, and sort of started deciding that we're going to get ready for getting our house built.
Is it close to where you are now?
Yeah, it's pretty close, about 20 minutes from where we were originally.
And you guys, is there a fair amount of property down there?
Yeah, in pockets.
Yeah.
So
like how much land were you able to buy for your new place?
So we got 15 acres.
That's cool.
Sort of the little subdivision we're in. I think it's only like 9 or 10 lots, and the smallest one's 8 acres. So
subdivision with 15 acres, Nick. Subdivision up here is like a quarter of an acre max.
That's amazing.
Um,
And you guys worked with an architect to do that, to design that?
Yeah, so basically I found builders first, and figured out who we wanted to use as a builder. And then the builder we're going with is Beacon Builders. His name's Richie Brown. He's actually a linebacker for Mississippi State football team when I was up there. So, and I ran track while I was there. So we sort of crossed paths a little bit in college, but so he's more of a design build. So we've been going through design with him. He's got an architect he uses. His wife does a lot of interior design work. So we've been working with him through the whole design, getting everything going, getting the architect tied in, all that sort of stuff. And so we should be getting into construction contracting here shortly.
What, how many builders did you interview?
4 or 5.
And what made you go with them other than what you just said?
So yeah, like I just said, he's the design build, basically complete package, but also just sort of knowing who he is as a person, and
Yeah.
just talking through him on some other jobs he's done in the past, sort of set us up with him.
What was so enticing about the design build?
I think for me, it was just having that congruent path from zero to finished.
Yeah. And not
sort of
feeling like you had to manage two people.
Right. Yes. Because we did talk to an architect, just a standalone architect also, who wasn't necessarily tied in with any one particular builder. And she's like, oh, you could use this builder or that builder. You use this builder, we're going to have some more management on our end, and this, that, and the other. And just sort of, I don't know. I'm not necessarily a control freak, but I like to be tied in. I like things to be as seamless as possible. So,
well, you build rockets,
Yeah.
probably makes.
I would hope that that's a personality trait.
Pretty laid back, a little mistake here and there, no big deal.
Yeah, I met
we got 5 years to do this. We keep going.
Yeah, I went and interviewed a new CPA the other day, and I was telling him, like, yeah, this is all the things we got going on. I track it by this spreadsheet, and at the end of the year, I recap through this account, this, that, and the other. And he's like, yeah, we don't really have clients like you. Usually they come in, they're like, I haven't paid taxes in 5 years. And he's like, I can tell.
He's like, I'm going to pay you to let me do your books.
He's like, you want a job? I was like, no, do not want a job.
You want to sell me this spreadsheet?
But yeah, going back to the house build, it was just nice having just all one tie throughout the whole design and into build.
Were there any contractors you interviewed that were like massive red flags for you?
Yeah, so one guy I interviewed, and I've probably gotten farther into the building science research than I should as a
consumer.
Yeah, as a consumer. And so there's one guy I was talking to. I was like, yeah, we'd love to do 2x6 walls, zip, this, that, and the other. And he was like, yeah, we could probably do that. I don't know, zip. I don't know if we can get zip, though, in this area. And, like, I'm driving around. I'm like, zip, zip, zip. And the guy we're going with, he's like, yeah, we can get zip. We'll probably do, like, a zip R6, and we can get it in this amount of time, this, that, and the other. Like it's nothing.
Yeah.
And I was like, dude.
Already talking you out of using it.
Yeah. I went and walked a build with him, and I just looking around, I was like, all right, that's enough.
Did you walk any other builds?
Yeah, so another guy who actually we were planning to work with him prior to getting on with Beacon, a really great dude. Like, we were set to go into design with him, and we were like 2 weeks out from going into design, and he called me, and he was like, hey man, I hate to do this, but this client who we've already done design with and said he was going to push his build off a couple of years, he's ready to pull the trigger and get going on it. And so he laid it all out for me, and I was like, man, I would take that too if I was you, because it was way far and above what we were wanting to do.
Yeah.
I mean, it just made way more sense for him to go with that build. He already had design. He's ready to go.
Yeah.
So we were
good on him for
about
having
that,
an honest conversation.
Yeah, and not being like,
Yeah.
like pushing you off or kind of leading you on or making sure it was in the bag.
No, yeah, for sure. He's a solid dude, and I'd definitely, if I was in that tier of construction, of design, I'd definitely want to get back with him. But I still keep in touch with him and keeping up with the builds he's got going on and stuff like that. So
that's cool.
Yeah, he's a solid dude.
Yeah, I think that walking a build or walking a project, if, it depends on what you're really looking for, but if you have certain wants and needs through a project, and it's not just about that bottom line number, which obviously that comes into consideration with everything that everyone does, but definitely walking a build, getting on a job site, seeing what people are doing, how they manage a job site, I think for me is a huge indicator as to, what that contractor kind of stands for and speaks for and what they allow on their job sites.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, definitely.
Sometimes when you just show up unannounced too is even better.
Yeah.
So you got to
Clean
tidy
the
up for a
site,
week.
hurry up.
Tidy up for a week.
Right.
Yeah, our job sites are always cleaned. You come back the next week and it's just like a pigsty.
Yeah, no doubt.
I've walked. Speaking like, I feel like I've walked some job sites and people like have invited me to walk, and I'm like, and it's
Why would you
a
bring me
mess.
in here?
Yeah, it's just
Right.
like, guys, like, there's food.
That's how the one guy was with that. I walked a job and who said we couldn't get zip. Like the temporary stairs to get up were like you could feel them swaying side to side as we were walking up them. And no handrails on anything. Like walking a 2x6 across the porch to get into the door. I was like, dude, you're bringing potential clients here?
Yeah.
Right.
Like, hey, that's dumb. Somebody's gonna fall through this and
Right.
sue you. And like, it was just major red flags with that guy.
Yeah, not who you want building your house.
No.
So is this your forever home?
Potentially.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily want to say forever because that's a long time, but we plan on retiring there.
Yeah, that's cool. That's good that you get that opportunity. I feel. How old are you?
30.
Yeah, not a lot. I mean, I'm 36 and I like don't feel like I'm in a position to be building our own house and being, in a position that you can do that and build something that you plan to, spend the next 20, 25 years in is really cool.
Yeah, we're definitely fortunate. My wife and I both were able to get through school without any student loans or anything like that. So
Wow.
we're able to hit the ground running coming out of school, and we've definitely been fortunate in that aspect.
Nice. I feel like I'd like to think at some point I would, but at the same time, I'm like, if I built a house, I think it would eat up all of my spare time. I think I don't know how enjoyable it would be.
I feel like you would have to do it when you're no longer like doing jobs for an income. Like
Yeah.
you've supplemented your income some other way, and you probably wouldn't want to build the whole house. You'd probably work with people to
yeah, for sure. But I think that like it still would eat up so much of my time, and I would be either pulling away from customers' jobs or it would be hard to separate that from work, and I wouldn't want it necessarily to be work. I'd want it to be a better experience than that.
yeah.
Otherwise, I feel like I'd live in the house and resent everything about it for however long it took to build. And
Yeah,
it's like you spent all this money and did all of this work, and you're like living there. I mean, I already live in an old house where it's there's a million things that I would change, and I wouldn't want to build a brand new house and get into it and feel that way.
Yeah, I briefly contemplated just contracting out myself and doing what I can here and there, but I got to thinking about it. I was like, man, I'm going to know every little, this is off by an eighth or a quarter here.
Not only that, but it's like, I mean, there's no doubt, like, you can save money by contracting it yourself, but your level of expectation has to change.
Right.
Yeah.
Where it's like, there's so many things that, just like you, like, if you do them day in and day out, you catch the nuances, you pay attention to things that, would go otherwise unnoticed. And It's the same thing with, like Boston's crazy. Everyone's a developer. Everyone's building these buildings, and you watch them go up, and it's like, yeah, they're overseeing them and they're supervising them and they're touching base and they're talking but they're not catching the little minor details that make the job better, that could potentially save a detail or could potentially make the project more desirable. Where it's like, and the only way you learn that is by being exposed to it.
Right. And I've had friends and family say, why don't you just contract it yourself? And basically my explanation is like, the expectations I have for the execution of this is higher than I know I can do.
Right.
If I was the one contracting it.
Yeah.
And so I just know there's a whole different, that's like telling the guy designing this one little valve on the rocket, why don't you just test it yourself? Like there's a lot of stuff that goes on up to that rocket engine that you don't really need to know about. You just need to know that you get what you get when you get it.
Well, I think that's what I was getting at earlier about the whole car, like manufacturing analogy, is that, you you don't have to fully like. It's great to understand what the rocket ultimately does and how it works and how it is, a part of that of, the bigger picture. But ultimately, like if your role is get from point A to point B, there's a lot of opportunity for you to refine that process.
Right.
And and speaking or relating it to our industry, it's like that's one of the issues, and that's one of the issues I see is that people try to understand the whole process.
Right.
And they're again, this industry is filled with owner operators, and they're these guys that are trying to run a business, trying to be a contractor on site, understanding the entire complexity of a renovation, but also understand the taxes, the accounting, sales, marketing, like all of those other parts of it, where it's that's why it's complex, and that's why people fail. If we said, Briou, you need to build a rocket that gets from Mississippi to the moon, it's like you can't do that. It's you don't like someone like a single person cannot accomplish that. And I think if anything, I think that's something that's really important, or a good takeaway from this podcast is that this is a prime example of why working as a team is really valuable. Is that you're able to hyper focus on point A to point B, and someone else picks it up from point B and continues down the path.
Right.
Are you at work right now?
I am located at work. I'm not on the clock.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, do you have like an American flag and some like crazy switch type thing behind you? I was like, damn.
Do we lose him?
Maybe. No, I hear him.
Okay, you good?
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's fine.
Computer in it freaked out on me.
Looks legit.
Yeah, it looks like he's got some. What are those controls behind your head?
So that is a. Y'all hear me? My computer is freaking out. Okay, sorry. Yeah, so that is basically just an old control panel for a comm system.
Oh, thought that was the launch button.
Yeah.
No, we have a room with 100 consoles in it for.
Does one person press the launch button? Is it like the movies?
Well, once again, we don't launch. Launches are bad here. But basically.
The fire button.
It basically comes down to a single point click for going into an automated sequence that then brings the engine online.
Is that all that person does?
No.
Damn.
No.
It's their only job.
It's like
just to hit the button.
Yeah, so throughout for a test, and it's different from different projects, but on an actual test day, we'll have the test conductor, who's basically the orchestrator of all the different components throughout that day. We'll have a fuel transfer engineer, oxygen transfer engineer. On the electrical side, we have controls engineers, data system engineers, and video operators. Basically, anything you can think of that would be needed to test a rocket, we have an engineer running a console controlling those systems. And so it's a big orchestrated dance, and even more so for the core stage testing we did. We had our team who ran the facility, the NASA team ran the facility, getting all the commodities to the rocket. And then Boeing had their own whole suite of people controlling everything on the rocket, the engines, the tanks, all the electronics on the rocket, which is absolutely insane. And so it's all a big dance to make fire.
Well, we got to get these videos. I'll make sure that everything's approved and get them onto our Instagram too when we release this. I'm thinking, what are we, a couple weeks out, Nick?
Yeah, I think
because we took time off for Doug's baby, so we have probably a few coming out ahead of you, 2 or 3.
But yeah, we'll get those videos shared up on Instagram. Briou, this was amazing. I was quiet, but mainly because I have no idea. Like I don't know the questions to ask. It's just so interesting, and you're going back to what I said in the beginning of the podcast. And I know you laugh because it's like, no, I do this every day. It's pretty straightforward. But the what I said in the beginning of the podcast, the fact that, my understanding was that NASA wasn't even a thing anymore. Like maybe there was some handful of people working on this, but there wasn't much going on. And you had kind of referred to the end of the shuttle age, but it's cool to know that it's alive and well, and that we continue to explore. Though I don't fully understand why. It's cool.
You will. Just wait.
I will.
Yeah, I'm sure somebody will chime in the comments with some reasonings as to why we're still doing stuff, and I probably should know better than what I do know as to why we're still pursuing these goals. But yeah, it's definitely a crazy industry to be in, and and like you were saying, a lot of people don't think about it. They elementary school age, say you can be anything you want. You could be an astronaut.
Yeah.
And then beyond that, like it falls off of a lot of people's radar.
Yeah.
But it's still a thing.
That's cool.
Yeah, man. Well, thanks for your time. I appreciate it.
Appreciate you hanging out.
And as Nick said, thank you always for the support. We appreciate it. No if you run into anything with your house build, you have questions, obviously reach
100%.
out.
Yeah, 100%.
Nick will fly down there.
Appreciate that. Yeah. No, y'all both need to come down. We got some.
I actually want to.
All right.
Yeah, for sure.
Never had crawfish anyway.
If you got any extra space on your skin, we got some pretty solid tattoo artists down here.
I have a little bit. I would get tattooed.
Look up Matt Stebley.
Yeah.
I'll send you his Instagram, but he does some real cool stuff.
Cool.
He's right here on the coast, and y'all can hit up the Mississippi coast and then go over to Baton Rouge, meet up with Slash and Tej.
I like that idea.
Listen, if I come down, you have my word. I'll get tattooed. I'll get something.
Nice.
But I already have a lobster, so I can't get a crawfish tattoo. Too similar. I get a gator. I could do that, like a little gator tear out. Maybe. Yeah. Nick, what are you gonna get?
I don't know.
You can get the crawfish.
Yeah, I'll get the crawfish.
We get a rocket ship.
Yeah.
You can get the launch button, Nick.
Oh, I like that. Where would I pick it up?
You're the launch conductor.
Don't
Yeah, we're gonna let that one lie.
All right, man. Well, appreciate your time. All you have to do, the leave button will not work. You can just close out the window. It'll upload everything on our behalf. If you have anything else you need or wanted to say or forget, just reach out, email. But it should be out in a couple of weeks.
Sounds good. I appreciate it. Thank y'all for y'all's time. Appreciate y'all having me on.
Yeah,
looking forward to listening to everything else y'all put out and keeping up with y'all's builds.
Yeah, man. Thank you. Good job. I know it's not easy getting on here.
Oh, it's just another day.
Thanks, man.
Cheers, man.
All right. Later.
See ya. Kind of want to go to space now. Nah, I actually don't. But that's pretty cool. I know a lot of people do go and like watch, not close, but watch, launches or like test fires and stuff like that. That would be pretty sick. It's probably so loud.
Yeah, because they are far away.
Yeah.
Like you see like the news reporters and stuff. It's so mind-boggling to me.
It's like make believe.
It is, and earlier today I was on a project. I was at a new job, and the house is underneath the flight path for Logan, so it's like planes are going over constantly. Yeah. And most of them are like normal commercial planes. There was a few like private jets, and then all of a sudden this monster. I was like, dude, that thing is massive. And I'm just standing there like a little kid watching it go over my head, and it's moving slow enough where I'm like, how is that up in the air right now?
Yeah.
And it's just I don't oftentimes think about that or things like that, but it just in that very moment I'm like
the physics of it.
Yeah, it's so crazy that thing up there is just literally coasting into
and
Boston
you can't do it.
Right.
Like I feel like you see those planes, it's like if that thing could fly, I should have no trouble.
Have you seen the zero gravity jetpacks?
Dude, maybe.
I'm pretty sure it's. I'm gonna look it up because I started following that account, and
I've seen
Take on Gravity. Gravity Industries. Dude, these things
Potential sponsor.
potential sponsor. They're an aerospace company. And then it says mission to reimagine the human flight and inspire a generation. Gravity.co. But it's Take on Gravity on Instagram. These are literally straps to your back. You hold it's like four
It's like a
jets
cartoon.
in your hands, and they literally just skate across, like they just fly. It's insane.
You need to get an NS
Like you
one.
gotta dude. I think I looked up how much they were. I think it's like, I mean, it's got to be 50,000, if not.
Oh, it's got to be more than that.
I'm gonna see if I can Take on Gravity.
I can't imagine you could just fly them anywhere.
Take on Gravity.
But I definitely think that you should get one.
Jetsuit price. Oh, my bad. 440,000.
Yeah, that makes more sense.
It's just, yeah, it's so crazy. 2 major jet engines
Just
on each arm
letter
with
it, run it
engine
through the
housing
company.
Imagine.
Show up to a meeting.
If I ever go out of business,
just
I'm just
land
gonna,
in that thing.
leverage all my credit on a jet suit. Like, yeah, you're not doing so well. It's like, all right, 440 grand. Bye bye.
Show up to the kids' softball games. Land on the field.
Dude, I'd be the coolest dad.
Oh, that's insane.
Is that Marley Reed and Indy's dad?
That is pretty nuts.
It's absolutely wild. Well,
Yeah, but it's interesting. I like having people like that on the podcast. And he did a nice
I just
job
like listening.
Yeah, he did a nice job because it's very difficult, if you haven't had experience with public speaking or being on a podcast, kind of holding that conversation and answering questions and retaining what we ask you. And I feel like dumbing it down enough so that we could understand. But it was the type of podcast where it's like, I just want to sit here and listen to what he has to say for like 2 hours. But it's cool. Yeah. I also would like to get down and see that area. That's someplace in the country that I always like to see. I think that there's such rich tradition and heritage, and history down that way. And I also did not realize that a portion of Mississippi was coastal. So
Yeah, like I would have bet big money on that.
yeah, that it was not. There was nothing on the coast of Mississippi.
Yeah, like I just think of rivers. That's it.
I thought it was just going to be like southwest of like the most southwest tip of Virginia somewhere.
Yeah, you're on the wrong side of Florida,
Nah.
right?
Well, I'm thinking
Virginia's
like
on the other side.
no, Virginia is north of it, but I'm thinking it's pretty wide and not too tall.
Oh, I
And
get it. No, I'm thinking-
I was thinking like the southwest tip, like that's where it was down in that area, but it's directly south of where I was thinking.
Well, we sound really smart right now.
Yeah, and now I just want like Cajun food. Some like jambalaya or something.
Well,
Maybe.
next week, who do we have next week?
I don't know, but I just got an email and I was like, oh, sweet, I'm going to know who's coming on next week. And
Oh,
then it
it's
said
Jake.
August 23rd.
August 23rd. Oh,
Yeah, so I did not have the
that's
right
a new
person.
That's a new appointment.
Yeah, I was like,
Oh my-
I got this reminder. And then I'm like, nope, that's not the right date.
Yeah. So guys, now you know we're booked way out till August with guests. But next week, we have Joy Moyler. She is an interior designer out of New York. I actually connected with her through that little architectural digest thing I'm doing. But her and I chatted over the phone, and she just has a really pretty impressive portfolio and catalog of people that she's worked with. So if you guys want to check her out before you listen, head over to Joy Moyler Interiors. That's MOYLER interiors.com. And then stay tuned next week for that conversation. And as always, thanks to our sponsors, Duration Molding and Millwork, Rockwool, and Upstate Merch. Oh, wait a second. I forgot to give away some swag.
Uh-oh.
Maybe I'm just trying to hold you guys on the phone a little bit longer. We got Griff Built. So what Griff Built says, listened for a long time and have maybe missed only a handful of episodes over the 200 there are now. And of those, I can't say there is an episode that I didn't enjoy or learn something new from, even if I didn't agree with the guest. Overall, great podcast for creators, builders, designers, tradesmen, or anyone interested in making stuff. So, Griff Bill, I just sent you a message on Instagram. I need your size and your address. Get me that, and we'll get you some swag from Upstate Merch. And if you guys are interested in getting some free swag, head over to iTunes, drop us a 5-star review, let us know what you like about it. And for bonus points, maybe you share that review on your story on Instagram, tag us, and we'll get you some swag. See you guys next week.